A very good evening and a warm welcome to Personal Finance. I am Gugulethu Cele. Joining me in studio today is Dr. Bobby Ramasia, who's the Principal Executive Officer at Bonitas Medical Fund. Now that's to talk about all key things with regard to medical aid, how to choose the right cover, and more importantly, how fraudulent activity within the medical aid space plays an impact on you too as a consumer. Dr. Ramasia, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Good to have you with us.
Well, good evening, Gugu, and good evening to your listeners.
Thanks so much, sir. Perhaps let's pick up on the broader scale, which comes to the 101s of choosing an efficient medical aid plan. I take it a lot of South Africans like to assume that they don't get as sick as often as they'd like to. But when it comes to finding the appropriate plan, is there ever such a thing as choosing too much cover or too little?
Well, you're absolutely correct that, sometimes people, they choose too much and sometimes they choose less, given the fact that, obviously, money is difficult to get these days. But unfortunately, if you choose less for your cover, you find that by the halfway of the year, you have already run out of your benefits. So that's why it's always best to look at your medical cost, have your budget, make sure that whatever you pay for your healthcare cost, you put it down so that at least you work out the full budget for the whole year.
Would it also be advisable to speak to the medical practitioners that we interact with who have your records and are able to establish an estimate of how often and frequently you actually visit them?
No, absolutely. Your GP or your healthcare practitioner is your gatekeeper, and he sort of got an idea how much your costs are. But all and above that, I think it's also important to get a healthcare broker who can be able to tell you which plans are there available, which ones you can choose from, depending on your ailments, of course, and as well as in terms of what benefits you want to look for in your medical aid cover.
And I take it, as you mentioned, it would be probably best positioned for you to find someone neutral who can give you an accurate comparison, because you don't want to be comparing bananas with apples, right?
No, absolutely. Most of the healthcare brokers, they've got various medical aid covers that they are servicing. So therefore, they will sort of give you a broad range, that because there are close to about 92 medical schemes in the country. So therefore, that will actually give you a broad range to choose from and to be able to get the right one. But most important, ensure that the medical aid that you choose should be one of the big players. Make sure that at least the solvency ratio, which is the regulatory environment, that at least they're above 25%. And also,
what does that actually mean, that solvency ratio and the 25%?
Well, the solvency ratio, it sort of demonstrates that given the certain amount, there's a certain amount of reserves, financial reserves or monetary reserves that the scheme has got, that it can be able to pay the claims for a certain period of time. So the Medical Schemes Act, it says the medical aid should have at least minimum 25%. So if you've got less than 25%, you need to make sure that you demonstrate your business plan how to go above 25%. Although that's a topic that is still being debated, that if you are a big scheme, do you need that 25% solvency ratio? Yes.
It makes a lot more sense, making sure that the medical aid company basically has enough money to pay out for its beneficiaries. But I want to touch on something else. Given the macroeconomic environment, we know that many South Africans are under pressure when it comes to their pocket. Given the timing of the environment, rising interest rates, minimal income coming through for South African households, would it ever be advisable for consumers to change their cover? And if so, to a cheaper option? Is this something maybe where, again, a financial services professional would also be able to assist?
Well, obviously, when your revenue or your income changes, you need to revisit your budget and make sure that, it can at least meet your requirements. And normally, because medical aid cover, it's a garage payment. That's the first thing that people look for. How can I cut it down? But I still say, if you can be able to cut your premium, but you also have to take part into it, ensuring that you at least ensure that you've got a healthy lifestyles. You adopt certain good habits. You adopt, like maybe exercising, having good diet, avoid the risky behaviors and all those things. That in itself general in the South African setup, it can reduce 20 to 25% of the healthcare cost.
Sure, that's a significant amount, Doctor.
Yeah.
I also want to touch on the dynamics between young individuals versus their more mature peers. I understand that there's a new dynamic now that younger individuals are opting for cheaper options or just hospital covers and taking on the day-to-day expenses by themselves. How has this skewed the dynamics in the medical aid industry?
Oh, my dear, you tell me about the youngsters. Youngsters, they don't feel like they need a medical cover.
Because they feel they can live forever, right?
Exactly. So therefore, you find that we do have a major challenge in the medical aid industry, that the youngs are not joining the medical aid cover. And those ones that are in the medical aid cover mostly are the sick and the older ones, because they know that, you can't survive, given our scenario in South Africa, whereby you find that, our public health care is not one of the best. So therefore, people that have got ailments, they feel that they are more protected with a medical aid care. And also coming back to the question of the youngsters, well, most of the youngsters that are conscious about their health care and that you need to contribute something to your health care, they choose like the maybe hospital benefits cover only. And then the other things, then they opt for the hospital insurance, which I'm sure you hear about it on TV most of the time. They tell you that when you are sick, we're going to pay you a certain amount. But the ones that I've not heard about, you find that they pay close to only about maybe 5,000 per day, which is your hospitalization.
Is that enough, though?
Not definitely, it's not enough. Let's take an example. If you've got appendicitis, if you go for your appendectomy, minimum you can stay in the hospital for at least about 3 days. And the appendectomy on its own, it costs about 40 grand. So if you're going to get 5,000 per day, it covers only 15,000. So you'll have a shortfall of close to about 25,000. So therefore, that's something that now it now start eating into your pocket. Yeah.
What about the dynamics with women, Dr. Ramasia, given the fact that when they grow older, some women tend to become parents and might need medical aid cover, not only for themselves during their pregnancy, but also for their little ones? Is that a new dynamic also taking place?
Well, that is the nature of the healthcare industry. As you know, mothers are the ones that take care of the families, and they are the ones who tends to be in the forefront in choosing a medical aid, because they know, immediately when everyone is sick in the household, the first person they rush to is the mother. So that's why you find that they are the ones that are in the forefront, because they know, if you've got the newborn baby, or you've got a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old, should anything terrible happens to you, going to the public health care, obviously is not an easy choice to go for. But if it's something major, you would like to have a choice to be able to get the best for your young one or for your family member. So that's why you find that the ladies are the ones that are in the forefront in terms of choosing a medical aid.
Something else that takes place, though, and quite prevalent in South Africa from what I understand, is fraudulent activity when it comes to medical aid cover. How serious is that in our local landscape? And more importantly, how does it have a ripple effect on individuals who want to be new members to medical aids? Because I'm sure they tighten up their restrictions as well. Waiting periods get longer. Individuals need to go for tests to prove that they don't have any significant ailments that they're coming on with when joining a new medical aid.
Well, that's a major problem that we have in the medical aid industry, because these people that are involved in this kind of practice, which is fraud or abuse or over-servicing, because those are the people that actually make the healthcare cost to be increased by close to about 20%.
Sure.
So that it ultimately, as a medical aid person, you need to put that into your cost. And therefore, if we can combat that kind of problems, that will significantly reduce the cost of premiums per member or per family as such. So, but we at Bonitas, what we have done, we have actually come up with a sophisticated technology that can be able to detect a member who is either involved in over-servicing or abuse or fraudulent activity, or also the service provider, whether it be a doctor or be the hospital that is involved, because that can actually pick up that kind of trends, because it gives the rules This technology, it gives the rules into the system, and it also gives the algorithms to show us that, this particular trend, this is what is happening in this particular person. And in that way, we're hoping with that system, we can be able to bring it down. But you're living in a situation, human beings, they're always coming up with all kinds of ways. But we hope and believe this time we are at least a few years ahead of them.
Let's hope so, but let's also speak to the consumer at home who's looking for these alternatives or wants to change a medical aid, joining on as a dependent with regard to their spouse's medical aid. Are there other options available to them, or do they just need to comply with the stringent regulations?
Well, unfortunately, the medical aid products are the only appropriate tools that you can use to actually deal with your interventions in terms of your medical needs. The other ones that I've mentioned, the medical insurances, they actually cover you less, and they give you a false sense of comfort, thinking that everything is covered. Because take, for example, there's this drug they call Herceptin that you've got that is used for treatment of breast cancer. That drug on itself, it costs close to about $500,000 for a year course. So you can imagine the products that we have in the country, in the health insurance, they won't be able to cover that kind of amount of money. So if you unfortunately get afflicted with such a condition, you'll find yourself really in a bad situation.
Well, Doctor, we've said quite a bit. Let's get a quick recap now of some of the key considerations that we need to look into when choosing the appropriate medical aid cover. Dr. Ramasia, back to you. We've said quite a bit, but maybe the key considerations that consumers need to bear in mind when it comes to choosing medical aid cover, what would your tips be?
Well, my tips is that it's important for you, because if you've got a big medical cover, it means it has got sufficient reserves, and it has also sufficient solvency ratio. And also make sure that the products that are available there, they actually suit your medical needs. If you are on chronic medication or hypertension or asthma, the product that you choose, you must also check that it's actually covered by those particular plans that you're using. But more than everything else, I think you need to put your skin in the game as well, ensure that you practice the correct lifestyle. Prevention, there's nothing that beats that. Exactly.
Doctor, thank you so much for the advice today. Clearly we haven't taken any apples because we don't want to keep you away on a light note. But that's where we leave things for personal finance this evening. A big thank you once more to Dr. Bobby Ramasia, who's the Principal Executive Officer of Bonitas Medical Fund. Do remember that we want to hear from you, so send us your thoughts and suggestions. You can tweet any of your comments to @CNBC Africa using the hashtag Finance410, or to myself @Gugulethu. Until next time, do be sure to always seek appropriate financial advice from a certified financial planner. But for myself and the team, that's where we leave it for tonight.